Listen, honey, Pennywise did not come to play the radio with the people in Derry. Do you understand? He had everybody wrapped around his clawed, clammy, clowny hands until he didn't. Hey, y'all, welcome back to my channel Reviewed, where we talk about all things television and film from today and yesteryear. So I wanted to come on here and do a brief recap of Welcome to Derry season finale. The people in Derry got a wake up call with a bunch of black fog. When I tell you that fog was covering that town, the way it swept through that town, people was like, what in the world is going on here? And I'm thinking to myself, folks just standing outside looking. I'm like, girl, get in the car. The lady that had the baby in her hands. I was like, ma'am, if you don't get your behind in a building somewhere, you sit up here looking at all this fog coming your way and you're not doing anything but staring like miss me with it. And then the lady that was peeking out of the store window with that Pennywise smile on her face, I was like, oh yeah, it's about to go down. So at the end of my last video, I said that I was wondering if Pennywise had targeted Will specifically because Will's dad was trying to stop the military men from burning or whatever they were trying to do to that artifact. But come to find out, honey, Pennywise is trying to get everybody, okay? He done went to the school, they made an announcement over the intercom like he's the principal and then summoned all the doggone kids to the auditorium. And honey, when they get there, they were in for a shocking surprise. The students have made their way into the auditorium, honey, and the principal is on the stage and he is speaking, but you could kind of tell immediately that something is off. So the curtains end up opening and you see Pennywise there with his arm up the principal's back, basically treating the principal like he's a ventriloquist doll dummy, okay? And honey, he ends up ripping his head off. The kids are running, they're trying to get out of the auditorium, the doors are locked, and everything just go left from there.
When I close my eyes and I dream of you, I see your pretty faces and I taste them too. But oh my, how I wish to cry every time we say goodbye.
Pennywise does his whole mouth thing, okay? And we see the bright light of energy radiating, and he puts all the kids in the auditorium in a trance, okay? And they all start floating at the same time. And I'm thinking to myself, the fact that he was able to hypnotize all these kids like this at once is definitely giving clown from outer space, okay? Lily, Marge, and Ronnie are in their little hangout spot and they start to notice all the fog that is taking over Derry. The girls come across this bulletin board where all these kids are missing. And it was like, ain't no way in the world Pennywise was able to kidnap all these kids just like that. So they go to the school and nobody's there. All the kids are gone. And this flyer ends up flying up and has the photo of Will. So, of course, they are panicking now and like, oh my God, we got to go save our friends. So, of course, Ronnie is not afraid to go on the lion's den because she was like, look, we got this artifact. We can use this to protect ourselves, but we got to go catch Will. We got to go get our boy. The girls pile up on this bike, honey, and all three of them are trying to follow this trail of blood while being on this bike. And they figure out very quickly, hey, this is just not going to happen. So they end up seeing that the milkman had been unalived by Pennywise. Okay. So once they realize that there is a truck there, Marge is like, this is going to be the way that we're going to get to where we need to go. Okay. So of course, Ronnie and Lily are looking at Marge like, girl, you ain't got but one eye. Don't none of us know how to drive. And Marge is like, well, my uncle has a truck. And it was like, well, did you drive it before? She was like, no, but I watched him. And honey, when I tell you she was wheeling that truck, Marge was doing that thing with her one eye. Okay. Will's dad, we already know he's on base. Remember the major said to make sure that he could not leave. So he makes a phone call to the house and nobody's picking up the phone. He calls again and finally someone picks up and honey, it is Pennywise talking his talk. Okay. He basically he's talking to Leroy, and then you hear Will come on the line, and Will is like, he's kind of disoriented, like, where am I? Where am I? And of course, Leroy is freaking out because he knows now that Pennywise has his son. This is Leroy's formal introduction to Pennywise. Okay, I believe this is the first time he's ever heard him speak or say anything directly to him. And baby, Leroy was like, don't you touch my son. Don't you put your hands on my son. And Pennywise was like, well, let me go. Let him go. Let me put him back in the space. He was like, he want to make sure he keep Will fresh because dark meat tastes the best. And I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. Pennywise is a mess. Okay.
Will! Back in the wagon for Willie boy. Gotta keep him nice and fresh.
Listen, please.
The dog meat tastes twice as sweet.
Don't put your hands on my son! Don't
Leroy goes to see Halloran, honey, okay? And Halloran is in the room playing with a blicky. He is trying to figure out if he's just going to go ahead and off himself because he cannot continuously deal with these voices and these people that he keeps seeing, which is something that he told Leroy would possibly happen. He was like, if I open the gate, I may not be able to close it, and that's just not something I'm wanting to deal with right now. So he is in a process of wanting to unalive himself, and Leroy is asking him for his help. And at first, Halloran is not hearing it. He really does not care. And then Leroy lets him know that Pennywise has Will. He was like, he got my son. He was like, can you please just help me save my baby? Please. And he's like, I promise whatever I need to do to make sure that you're going to be okay and get you the help that you need. He said, I promise you I will do that for you. Can you just please help me? And nonetheless, Halloran ends up going along with Leroy to see if they are going to be able to save Will.
He's not even baby. It's
I'm sorry.
You lied to me, Leroy. You're a liar.
No, I'm gonna get.
It's no shade, but Charlotte acting in that moment was really, really bad. Okay. Hank was even looking at her like, girl, bye. So Halloran and Leroy make it to Rose's house. You know, Charlotte, again, she's upset because Will is gone. And they are trying to figure out exactly what they could do to track Pennywise so they can figure out how they're going to rescue Will. Rose's nephew is there. He had to let her know that the military found the other artifact. And so she suggests to Halloran that whatever ability he tapped into before, to help the military track Pennywise, that he tap into that same ability this time, to help them locate Will. And of course, Halloran, he is not here for it because he's already dealing with seeing all these spirits, right? And Rose tells him, she was like, I can give you something to quiet all the noise, so you'll stop seeing those spirits and stop hearing them. And honey, she mixes up this concoction and she gives it to Halloran. And as she is, sitting there talking to him, because he wanted to know how long would it take for it to kick in, baby, it kicked in immediately. And he was able to tap in to Pennywise. He told them that the girls had the artifact and that they were headed in Pennywise's direction. And, Hank was like, my baby girl Ronnie's with them. He was like, yeah, Halloran was telling him like, yeah, they're on their way to try to save Will as well. So the girls, they end up, getting into a little bit of a accident in the milk truck, but they got to where they was needing to go. Okay, Marge got them where they needed to go, one eye and all. And she let them know very clearly that we did not have an accident because of my one eye. Okay, it was due to all the fog. Nonetheless, um, they are starting to notice that Lily is being a little bit aggressive. And we know that, just from the last episode, how she was once she, gets her hands on that artifact, she's very, she don't want anybody to touch it. But in this instance, her aggression is just becoming a bit overwhelming to the point of where it starts to cause some issues between her, Marge, and Ronnie. So, honey, everybody done piled into the van. They done laid Halloran out in the back, and he is giving them direction as to where Pennywise and his little caravan is headed.
Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm not looking at you any.
Yes, you are. You're looking at me like you think I'm crazy. Lily.
Now, Ronnie and Lily get into a little scuffle, okay? Lily is talking out the side of her neck. She's telling Ronnie, girl, I wish I never met you. I never should have tried to help you with your dad. And, she's saying all these things. And Marge is like, Lily, you need to let that artifact go. Like, that's what has you acting like this. Like, you need to let it go. Of course, Lily is not trying to hear it, honey. They try to take it from her. All of them fall to the ground, and ultimately, Ronnie had to put Lily in a headlock. Like, girl, pause. She's trying to talk some sense into Lily, and eventually Lily snaps out of whatever trance she was in, and Marge ends up taking the artifact, and she was like, from now on, we're just gonna rotate holding this, just to prevent anything else from happening. The girls end up seeing the kids floating in the air. Okay, honey, all of them are floating like some kites. Okay, so Ronnie, Marge, and Lily, they're running and they're looking up, and we see them floating directly behind the wagon that Pennywise is in. And when they showed the inside of that wagon, y'all, and I saw that arm on the floor of that wagon, I was like, oh Lord, he didn't ate Will, because I swear that arm was a black kid's arm. Okay, and so fortunately, it was not Will. Will was like he was like the first kid directly behind the wagon that Pennywise was in. Once the girls get close enough to Will, they start jumping up and down because they're trying to pull him down, right? And Will cannot hear them calling him because he is still in the hypnotic trance. So while they're jumping up and down trying to save Will, honey, the wagon door flops open. Out walks Pennywise. Pennywise got this horn in his hand and he's just honking his horn, and he starts teasing the girls. He was like, the fool, the freak, the failure, like who's who. And I think for a moment they forgot that they had that artifact in their hand, because the look on their face was definitely given beyond afraid.
The fool! The freak! The failure! But who is who?
The girls are huddled together, and in this moment, Pennywise is literally running circles around them. Like Ronnie, she is holding the thing out. They're trying to see which direction he is going. And I'm like, y'all better not look this ninja in the face, because you might just be floating too. Like, for real. Look the other way. Okay.
I say, look the other way when it come by you. Look the other way when it come by you.
At some point, Marge ends up getting separated from Ronnie and Lily. Okay. And Pennywise has Marge all to himself. So, I was like, oh, he about to hypnotize her. And I was like, well, she ain't got but one eye, so will it have the same effect, if he, do that light or whatever with his mouth. Then I was like, oh my God, he about to eat Marge. I was like, oh, she about to go be rich. And so he starts taunting Marge. And he does tell her, oh, I can't wait to see what you taste like and things like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, she about to go.
Oh, I've always wondered how you'd taste, Margaret Dozier.
Pennywise pulls out this flyer and he shows Marge the picture of Richie, and he tells Marge that this is your son, Richie Tozer. And Marge is like, oh my God, what are you talking about? She kind of looking at Pennywise like, you done lost your doggone mind. Pennywise, his fangs end up protruding out of his mouth. So he is literally about to bite Marge's face off. And he ends up freezing. Before he is able to, like, literally bite her, he ends up freezing in that moment. And so Marge is able to get away from him. Once Pennywise freezes up, all of the kids' bodies start to drop from the sky. Like, they literally fall to the ground and they end up waking up, like they snap out of the trance or whatever. And I was a little confused, because I was like, what made him stall? What made him pause like that? Because we already saw that Ronnie had that artifact in her hand. So I don't know. I'm assuming it's because Halloran and the rest of them that were in the van ended up pulling up. So I'm wondering if it was because Halloran was so close and he was able, he's able to kind of tap into Pennywise, if that's why he ended up freezing up. Because at that point, we do see that Leroy and the rest of them in the van ended up making it to that particular area where everyone else was. So Will wakes up and, they're all hugging on him. They're happy to see him. And Will, he's a little disoriented and he doesn't know what happened. So, honey, they sitting down hugging Will trying to figure out what's going on. And the van almost run them over. So, honey, it's not enough that these folks are dealing with Pennywise behind. You got the doggone military around here pulling triggers on people. And I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. So you got the doggone major and his team out here looking for Halloran and Leroy. So the major colonel, whatever he is, honey, he spots Pennywise. And in this moment, again, Pennywise, he's still frozen in that particular place. He's still there. And this fool, of course, he gonna take his old behind over there. And I was like, you know what? At this point, you gonna get what you get. Once he walks up on Pennywise, he looks at him, and we get this moment that I've never seen a Pennywise have before. Okay, so Pennywise actually goes into his. We get a thought from his subconscious, and he goes back to the whole situation that happened at the circus, when he goes into the woods, when the little boy was like, help him find his parents or whatever. So when he is back in this moment, his friend, the guy in the hat, he is like, Bob, wake up, Bob, what's going on? And then the little girl's like, Dad, you're okay. And so Pennywise is like, what do you mean, Bob? My name is not Bob. And he says something to the effect of, he's like, I'm a god. I am a kneader of the world. And, his friend was like, you done lost your mind. You must have hit your head real hard. And I'm confused because I'm like, okay, so is he really Mrs. Kersh's father? Like, is Pennywise really Mrs. Kersh's father? Or did this entity just so happen to take over this particular man's body? Okay. Because again, we still do not know where Pennywise derived from. I still don't know. I don't know if y'all caught it from this episode, but I still do not know. Okay. So I'm like, okay, so is this man really Mrs. Kersh's dad? And this thing just really took over his body. Nonetheless, also during this flashback, we get a moment where, again, Pennywise is talking to this guy who appears to be his friend, the guy with the top hat on. And he reaches out and he pulls the mask down and we see Halloran. And then once after he unmasks Halloran, something happens where Halloran flies out of the door and then it brings him back into the reality. So once Pennywise comes back into being Pennywise, right? The military man, he tells him, he's like, you're free to go. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is not an escaped convict, sir, that you're trying to help get away. This is a whole entity. Like, this is not a real person. But you know what I was wondering? Like, how is Halloran able to tap into him like this? Like, what connection does Halloran have with Pennywise that he is literally able to infiltrate Pennywise subconscious to the point of where he is actually there? Like, what is going on? I can't wait to see the connection between the two of them, because the way that Halloran is able to tap in, the way that he is and connect to Pennywise, I hope we get a little bit more of that if it's going to be a Derry season 2. But anyway, again, the military man is telling, Pennywise, you're free to go. And so Pennywise ends up transforming into, the entity that, the guy saw when he was a kid, when he was in the woods or whatever. And as soon as Pennywise transformed into this, I was like, oh, he about to eat his face off. And he did just that. So after Pennywise makes a meal out of the head military man, okay, Leroy and Hank, them, they are trying to get the other men in the military to stand down. Like, y'all need to let us go handle this. Like, you have no idea what you're doing. And of course, the other guy, he was like, saying Leroy is a traitor or whatever, and not to let him get away. So eventually, Hank, Leroy, and Miss Rose, baby, they have to, take over the military. They have to ambush them in order to get them to stand down. And unfortunately, at some point, we do see Rose's nephew get unalived by one of these military guys. Leroy, he ends up giving the artifact to Will. And I think this was the first time that we see this thing light up completely, like from the tip to the bottom. Like it literally was completely lit up. And, Leroy tells Will what he needs to do. And Will is very nervous. He's very scared. He's like, I'm not brave like you. I'm nothing like you. I'm not brave like you. And, his dad is basically telling him, son, you can do it, like, and quiet as it's kept, you ain't really got no choice. Like, it's either you gonna do it or we all up and stuck. Like we, like come on. So, Will, he is trying to make his way over to the tree. It looks like a tree to me, but he's trying to make his way over there to that tree so they can put this thing in the ground to stop Pennywise. So they are trying to stop Pennywise in his tracks, literally. And Leroy, he starts, you know, firing off some rounds, honey, and eventually he ends up popping off Pennywise's head. And so once that happens and we see Pennywise go down, I was like, ain't no way this ninja is done. Ain't no way he done. Okay. And then we see this head pop out, this Jack in the Box head pop out. I hollered so bad. Okay, this was crazy. Eventually, Ronnie, Marge, and Lily, they are trying to help Will get this thing in the ground. And at some point, Will, he does chicken out, like he is trying to fight them off because he doesn't want to go over there. And at that time, I think it was just that artifact making him, feel away, because since he was in such a close space with Pennywise, it was able to kind of manipulate him to make Will not want to do it. But ultimately, the girls, they end up, talking some sense into him, basically shaking him out of whatever he was in. And they go over and they are trying to get this thing stuck into the ground. Will and the girls are having a bit of a time trying to get that artifact in the ground. And honey, the ancestors was like, okay, hold on. We about to send y'all a little help. And in comes everybody's favorite 4 foot tall superhero. Okay. Here come Rich, baby. Rich come in and Pennywise is laid out after Leroy and, popped him a couple of times. And Rich throws up his middle finger at Pennywise like, and what?
What do you see?
A motherfucking miracle.
Listen, when I tell you Miss Rose had a trigger finger on her, every round she popped at Pennywise, she did not miss. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, she ran out of bullets, but baby, when I tell you she knew how to pull the trigger, she did. Okay. Pennywise soon realized that him trying to run over there to stop them kids, it wasn't working. So he ends up transforming into this huge bat vulture like creature. The more Pennywise flapped them big old wings, baby, the closer he was getting to them kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is about to happen? Because it literally looked like he was about to snatch all of them up. Fortunately, the kids were able to get it in the ground before Pennywise could touch down on them. Okay. Like once they stuck that artifact in the ground, it literally, that huge cosmic light that we see come out of Pennywise's mouth, it like lit up the whole Derry. Like it literally exploded to the point where it knocked Pennywise and his wig back. Okay. Like it knocked him clean out. So the kids are looking, because they're trying to make sure that this food is going to stay on the ground, okay? And Pennywise does not. So, like a phoenix, honey, Pennywise rises up yet again, but it was not what I expected, okay? So, as he is there trying to, I guess, gather himself, we start to see him transform into all of those entities that he appeared to the kids as. So we get to see him, transform from the little pickle looking dude for Lily. We got to see him transform from Ronnie's mom. And we get to see him as that baby that, that was in the movie theater in the car. And so while he is going through this transformation and all these things that we see him appear as, Hank is looking, everybody is looking, Charlotte, everyone is looking in complete, utter disbelief at what is going on. And I'm wondering myself, like, is this fool about to be up out of here, or what is going on? And of course, we do see Pennywise disintegrate. Okay.
Lively crowd.
They have a memorial service for Rich, and Marge, she gets up and she speaks and she says, what can I say about someone I've only known for a month? And I'm thinking to myself, you could say a lot, dear, because y'all are burying him because he saved you. Okay. Nonetheless, she does say a lot of nice things about Rich, but I was glad that we got to see the kids, have an opportunity to say goodbye to him. Also, while Marge was standing up, just giving her speech, we got to see Halloran he was standing behind the tree. So he was at the memorial as well, but he wasn't, sitting with the group. And he looks over and we see Rich with his arm around his dad and around Will. After the service, Halloran, he goes and sit next to Rich's dad and Rich's mom. And he says to them, that hand that you feel on your shoulder, he was like, that's your son. He was like, he will always be with you. And, his the man starts crying and he asks Halloran who he was. He was like, who are you? And, Halloran tells him, he was like, I'm just still trying to figure that out. But I thought that was really cool of him to kind of bring some comfort to Rich's parents by letting them know that, your son is with you and he will always be with you.
The hand you feel on your shoulders. Your boy's dear. He always will be.
So after Rich's memorial service, we do see Lily go visit her dad's grave site. And, she tells him that she's sorry it took her so long to come see him and, that she has friends now. After that, we see the kids meet up at their rooftop, the little hangout spot. And Marge begins to tell Lily about the conversation that she had when she was with Pennywise. She tells Lily that Pennywise told her she was going to have a son and that, the past, present, and future are pretty much all the same for him. Like it doesn't matter what time and space he's in. It's like he can infiltrate it at any moment. It doesn't matter. And so Marge says to Lily, she's like, what if he tries to go back and, change our parents, so we can't be born? Because she also tells Lily that Pennywise told her that Marge's son and his friends are going to be the ones to end him. Like they're going to be the ones to, get rid of him permanently, I guess. And, Lily was like, we can't worry about that. That'll just have to be their battle to fight. Halloran goes to see Leroy. I think they both were honorably discharged from the military. And, he tells Leroy that he is headed out of the country. He's going to London. He was like, I'm going to meet up with a friend of mine, who has a hotel. And he said I could be a cook in his kitchen. And of course, I'm like, okay, so he is the guy from The Shining or Dr. Sleep. Okay. Anyway, you know, he tells Leroy to, keep in touch and, let him know how everyone's doing. And Leroy says to Halloran, so I thought you didn't care. I thought you ain't want no updates. You ain't care or whatever. And he says, don't. And Halloran was like, well, don't tell nobody. And they give each other a hug and, say farewell to one another. Charlotte and Leroy, they meet up with Rose. And, Rose tells them that she's going to be selling her farm. She's going to be selling her house and, just move into a different area. And she also says to Leroy and Charlotte, she's like, we would love if you all would stay here with us, join our community, you know, in 27 years, Pennywise gonna, rear his ugly head again, And Leroy was like, we out. Me and my family did what we needed to do here, but we can't stay in Derry. No, ma'am. Ronnie and Will, they're talking, and Will says to Ronnie, well, you know what they say about Derry? Once you leave, you forget. And Ronnie's like, is that what you want? You want to forget everything? And they're having a conversation, and the two of them end up kissing. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the last time that the two of them will be in each other's presence.
You know what they say about Derry. Once you leave, you forget. That's good, right?
Is that what you want? To forget?
So, honey, the family then got their car packed up, okay, and they ready to head out. And here comes Charlotte telling Leroy that she is considering Rose's offer for them to stay. And Leroy's like, "Are you kidding me? Like, are you serious? You still trying to play Captain Save a Hole? Like, girl, no, we don't need to be staying in Derry." And you know, she convinces Leroy, to stay. And Leroy says to Will, hey, how you feel about staying here in Derry? And of course, Will is excited. And he was like, I need a pen. So he decides that he is going to write Ronnie consistently so she does not forget him or forget Derry. So while Charlotte and Leroy are staying in Derry, honey, Ronnie and her dad are throwing up the deuces, okay? They are in the wind, and I do not blame them. And y'all know how I feel about Hank. I still do not care for him because he done caused all this trouble because he don't know how to keep his pants zipped up. But anyway, I am glad that he is no longer looked at as the person that unalived all those kids. And, before he left Charlotte, she made sure that he had whatever information he needed, with meeting up with the person who was going to help them, I guess, continue along their journey to get to whatever destination that they were going to get to. At the end of the episode, we get this moment with Miss Kirsch where she is in the loony bin where she needs to be, okay? And she is like, where's my father? He did something to my father. She's saying all this stuff. And the orderlies there at the hospital, they start playing this song. And, we get this flash in the future. So here we are in October of 1988. So Miss Kirsch then been in this mental institution all this time. Okay. So Miss Kirsch hears the commotion that is going on in the hospital, and she leaves her room and she walks down the hall, and you see this orderly. He's talking on a walkie-talkie, and he makes a statement saying, "Oh, she's really done it this time. Miss Marsh has really done it." So Miss Kirsch walks into the room, and she sees this lady hanging from the ceiling. And on the floor, we see a young lady there, and it looks like she's trying to comfort her dad, and she's crying herself as well. So she looks up, and we see that the young girl is Beverly. And Miss Kirsch looks at her, and she just basically tells her not to worry, that, whenever you pass away in Derry, you're never really gone.
Oh dear. Don't be sad. You know what they say about Derry. No one who dies here ever really dies.
So the episode ends there, okay, with Beverly and Miss Kirsch. Now, I'm wondering exactly what is in store if there's going to be a Derry chapter 2. Okay. And we know that Will and his family ended up staying in Derry. So, from what Pennywise said, Marge is Richie's mom, right? So, I'm wondering if Lily is going to, eventually when she grows up, if she gets married and has a child. We already know that Ronnie and her family they got the heck out of Dodge of Derry, okay? And we already know that Rich is among his ancestors, right? So, with that being said, I'm wondering how many of these children in the movie here are related to the kids from Welcome to Derry. Because we already know that Richie is Marge's son. So I assume since Will and his parents stayed that maybe the black kid from the movie was Will's son. And remember when he said that his parents, they passed away in a fire. So I'm wondering if Ronnie comes back to Derry and her and Will get married and they end up having this young man as their son. And if that's the case, if their unaliving had anything to do with Pennywise, okay? I'm also wondering if Lily, if one of these, if the curly haired guy or well, we already know who the guy, who had the phobia. He was, a germaphobe. We already met his mom, but we didn't get to meet I don't recall us meeting the chunky kid's mom or the guy, the one that was afraid of the nun. I don't recall us meeting his mom either. And I wasn't clear on the guy that stuttered. I don't recall who his parents were either. So I'm curious if they are going to tie Welcome to Derry into the 1988 scenario and we get to see Will and everybody grow up, or if they are going to, if there's a Welcome to Derry season 2, if they are going to go back um to when Marge's parents were kids. You see what I'm saying? Like, is he going to try to change history? Because we do know that Pennywise can do that. Or is, will they focus solely on Rose and, the military guy, if they're going to take that storyline a little further, as well as the storyline with Mrs. Kirsch and exactly what happened when Pennywise or Robert or whatever his name was before he was Pennywise went into those woods. I'm wondering if it's going to flash back or flash forward, if there's going to be a Derry season 2. Nonetheless, I enjoyed it, and I am curious as to what they will come up with next, if there's going to be a season 2, but we shall see. We shall see. Well, that's all I have for you guys in this video. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate the support, and I will see you in the next one soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.